Hello everyone and welcome back to Economic Survey lecture series. This is lecture number 6. Whenever Government of India wants to promote any sector or government wants to bring about qualitative changes in the life of people, for example by promoting education, health and all these things, the Government of India brings these changes through schemes and reforms. These two aspects are also very crucial for UPSC examination. So today we are going to discuss some of the important schemes and reforms related to some important aspects of the Indian economy in this particular lecture. So as you can see, we have divided this lecture into 3 different parts. In the first part, we are going to discuss the reforms and the schemes related to service sector. In service sector, we are going to cover some important areas, for example, BPOs, business process outsourcing, air travel or air bubble, space sector, very crucial for India, and we are also going to have a small discussion on startups and the new schemes and reforms related to startups. Then we will move on to something very crucial called as sustainable development and climate change. Why is this important? This is important because sustainable development and climate change forms the basis of entire development model of the countries, especially for a developing country like India. So we are going to have a look at some of the basic areas related to environment and climate change like UNFCCC, Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goal, Paris Agreement, Nami Ganga, and National Adaptation Fund on Climate Change, National Hydrogen Mission, PM Kusum, Life and International Solar Alliance. Then we are going to look at some of the aspects of social sector initiatives by Government of India, which means what are those reforms and schemes that the Government of India has introduced to improve the quality of life of people. So we would start this discussion about this chapter on social infrastructure and employment with basic trends in different sectors like employment, for example, like health, etc. And then we would look at some of the schemes. So which are the typical areas related to social sector initiatives that we are going to look into? Education, skill development, employment, health, drinking water and sanitation, power and rural development. So let us start this entire analysis related to schemes and reforms with the services. So guys, let us begin with services. See, what does this picture bring to your mind? So for example, let us say that today you got a new laptop. When you got a new laptop, you faced some issues related to its operation because it has a new operating system. So what do? You call the customer care, right? Who responds from the customer care side? These people. So these people from BPO, business process outsourcing or call centers, they provide you response about how to operate your computers. So these are voice-based BPOs. Similarly, if you are facing any problem related to a product, sometimes we write mails to customer care or service department. And what do? They send us written replies. So they are non-voice based BPOs. So in India, we were considering both voice and non-voice based BPOs as a part of BPO and call centers. This used to be the system in India. Why? Because we have been following a rule called as BPO and other service provider 2008. So under this rule, in India, we were considering both voice based and non-voice based services as BPO. By the way, BPOs are also called as OSP, other service providers. And which are those companies which provide these services? IT based companies in the field of medicine, e-commerce, etc., etc. Now in India, the rules and regulations related to registration of BPO used to be very cumbersome and very difficult. You needed so many registration papers, documents and permissions. Work from home was not considered as a part of BPO. These were some of the challenges. But guess what? Because of COVID situation, work from home became normal and Government of India realized that their contribution and scope of contribution in future in the Indian economy is huge. So Government of India has made changes in the BPO or other service provider rules 2008. What are the changes? What are we doing now? We have a new system called as BPO and other service provider rules to 2021. Under it, the first change that we have made is that now we are only calling the voice based services as call center. We have not included the non-voice based services like writing, email, etc. as a part of call center. Number two, if a BPO wants to operate in India, we have removed the very difficult and complicated registration process. They can do their self-attestation and everything. They don't need to run from office to office for registration purposes. Now, there is no distinction between the BPO which caters to domestic services and the BPOs which provide their services to international clients. Because if you have too many bifurcations, you will have to create so many rules and regulations which makes the system complex. So we have created a unified system where the distinction between BPO giving services to domestic companies, BPOs giving services to international clients have been, the boundary has been removed, it has been merged. Now work from home has been allowed, which means in the BPOs now work from home is officially recognized as a part of BPO only. What are going to be the advantages of these reforms? The advantage of these reforms will be that it will increase penetration, it will lead to more opening of BPOs, increase in employment and general income. You know that during COVID, the flight services were also cancelled. International flight services, domestic flight services were all cancelled. But even if there is COVID situation, the export and import of basic goods, it was happening actually. For example, medical equipments, medicine, food, etc., etc. So you know what countries did in the world? Across the world, there were many countries based on their mutual agreement and the kind of bond that they share. So they entered into some agreement called as air bubble or bubble transportation. What happens under this agreement? So for example, if there is a lockdown and international flights have been suspended, so suppose that India and France, they sign this deal called as air bubble. So under that, both India and France will give some concessions to each other in limited number of flights between these two countries. And in fact, during COVID lockdown period itself, India had signed this air bubble arrangement with more than 30 countries of the world. Now, the basic premise or the requirement of this kind of arrangement between two countries is that they very well know that they are going to start full-scale commercial services very soon, but because of some crisis or health issues, it was not happening. So this is a temporary arrangement before the full-scale commercial resumption of the flight services. So this was also one of the reforms that happened during COVID crisis. Now, there is one more interesting thing which happened during COVID, that there were many Indians who were stranded across the world. They could not come to India because of sudden lockdown and sudden surge in COVID related cases. So Government of India started Vande Bharat mission. Under this mission, the Indians stranded in different parts of the world, they were brought back to India. In fact, Government of India not only brought the Indians, but they also brought citizens who belong to our countries, neighboring countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. We also extended this help to them under Vande Bharat mission. Now let us enter into space sector. From 1960s onwards, the major developments started to happen in the space sector in India. And who was taking care of it? Two departments. One, Department of Space and ISRO. These two were taking care of the developments related to space sector in India. Earlier the system was that these agencies, especially ISRO, through the administrative management of Department of Space, they were taking care of the entire space program and developments related to space sector in India. Similarly, in other countries of the world, their agencies, especially the government agencies, were taking care of the entire space sector. The role of the private sector was basically to provide some spare parts or give very small services. But now, over a period of last 10 to 15 years, there has been a massive change and sort of revolution in the field of space. How? Earlier, as I told you, that the role of private sector was merely to provide some spare parts, basic components, etc. But now the private sector has started to provide end-to-end services and solutions related to space. Now, Government of India also thought, why not increase the role of private sector in India's space programs? And we have taken some very crucial steps with keeping future in mind, that the role of private sector in the field of space can be very important. One of the motivation for Government of India that led to opening the space sector for private sector was that a very crucial department of the government called as ISRO has been very busy in construction of launch vehicles, satellite research and development, as well as taking care of every small details related to space program. Now, because right from the moment when the blueprint and the research is done till the time the construction of the launch vehicles and satellite is done, ISRO is involved in the entire process. Which means that once the most important work is done, even in the work which is not a very important, ISRO is involved, which leaves ISRO with very less time to devote in critical areas of research and development. So the government of India thought, why not bring private sector and take their help, especially in those areas whereby it is not of too much of importance for ISRO to be directly involved. So private sector can be involved in a limited way in those kind of jobs, which will free some important time of ISRO which can be devoted to further research and development and critical areas. And what has government done to achieve this target? Government of India has created New Space India Limited. It's a public sector company which Government of India has created, where the government would collaborate with the private sector in manufacturing small satellite launch vehicles, etc. But if you bring private sector, you also have to create a very robust regulatory mechanism. So what has Government of India done? Government of India has created Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center in Space. This is the nodal agency which will oversee or regulate all the facets of private sector involvement in India's space sector. Now, one of the growing fields these days, not only in India but across the world, is the manufacturing of drone and the policies related to drones. Now in India, we had created a policy. Ministry of Civil Aviation had published a policy called as Unmanned Aircraft System UAS Rules 2021 in the month of March. This was very restrictive actually, because if a drone company wanted to manufacture drone or fly drones, they had to take permission at every step. It was so restrictive that the players involved in the field of drone manufacturing and flying of drones, they felt suffocated and they complained to the Government of India. In fact, for example, the free to fly zones for drones were very limited. If you want to fly drones in India, manufacture drones in India, you have to take 25 permissions. If there is any mistake from your side related to drone manufacturing or flying, you have to pay a very hefty fine also. So these things were considered to be very demotivating and suffocating for this sector. This is one of the sunrise industries across the world. So the Government of India also modified this rule, the Unmanned Aircraft System Rule 2021, the one which we released in March. It was modified and we liberalized the drone rules in India, whereby the number of permissions required from the government was reduced from 25 to 5. The amount of fine in case of any mishappening, etc., has also been reduced. The no-fly zone or free-to-fly zones, this has also been changed. Now there are more free-to-fly zones. So we have liberalized these rules. And it's a very timely thing that the Government of India did, because if you suffocate a sunrise sector too much, then it might hamper the growth. But the word of caution is that you can't be too much liberal also, because the technology is very, very new and we don't know what is going to happen once this is implemented. So we have to be very careful in these kind of fields. Now let us look into some of the important developments that has happened in the field of geospatial data. Department of Science and Technology, they released guidelines for the creation, acquisition and use of geospatial data, including maps. So this geospatial data is used for creation of maps and contours in any country. And in India also we follow the same system. We have geospatial data, we use it for creation of maps. Now Department of Science and Technology, they have put so many restrictions and limitations on the use of the geospatial data for creation of maps, etc., where we realized that the geospatial data is almost absolutely freely available across the world and in India. and yet the Department of Science and Technology had put so much of restriction on the procurement of the data and use of data. So Government of India realized that those things which we are restricting, they are anyway freely available, so it is time that we bring some changes. So the Government of India has brought some changes in the field of geospatial data procurement and use, because anyway it is freely available, so why to put so much of restriction? So other than some sensitive restrictions that we have put, like mapping of some sensitive areas, border areas, etc., we have liberalized the rules so that the geospatial data can be used for map creation and other purposes in India also. Now let us look into startups. Very, very crucial. India is one of the topmost countries in the world which is taking proactive steps in the field of startups. Now, this startup culture in India took a major turn from 2016 onwards, when we started this program called as Startup India. Now, Startup India was launched with 19 different action plans which can be divided into 3 key areas. So when the Government of India started this program called as Startup India, they tried to make sure that those companies which were trying to register themselves, and they were trying to register themselves as startups in India, they should face as less restrictions as possible. We were trying to basically give them incentives and motivation to register them as startups in India. And government said, we will make your existence very smooth, we will not put too many restrictions, and wherever needed, we will support you by holding your hand. So these 19 action plans were basically meant to motivate the companies to register themselves as startups. So what are the 3 key areas in which the government was trying to help the companies? First is simplification and handholding. So easy legal support, self-certification. So if you want to start a company, the legalities, the rules and regulations that will be applied to you will be normal only. And earlier you had to go to different departments for attestation of form and certificate from a gazetted officer, etc., etc. So that was reduced. Now self-certification was good enough. So this was a very big relief to the companies. Second is funding, support and incentives. So Government of India said that if you are a startup, we will give you tax benefit. For example, government said they will not collect taxes for next 3 years, 5 years, etc. So some tax benefits were also given, financing arrangements were done for them. Similarly, industry, academia, partnership and incubation. So for example, guys, suppose I have a very great idea related to some aspects of the society. For example, like these days, there is a lot of COVID infection. These days, air pollution is also seen around us. So suppose I have a very brilliant idea of how to create a mask at low prices, which will be very effective to reduce the infection of COVID. It will also be effective in reducing air pollution impact on the body. Now, how do I implement this idea that I have in mind of the development of this mask? So I need support in finding out which material will be good, because the idea is there, but the fine tuning and the details are missing. So in these kind of scenarios, incubation centers are promoted by Government of India, whereby a person with good idea, a good futuristic solution to some problem, they can go to incubation centers and we can get support like how to convert this idea into real life masks, how to market the product, how to brand the product, etc., etc. All these supports are given in the incubation center. So this is how the Startup India scheme started. Now, look at the number of startups that has been recognized by Government of India. So 2016-17, the number of startups recognized was 733. Now look at 2021-22. The number of startups recognized by the Government of India, 14,000, right? So in 2016-17, then 17-18, 18-19, 19-20. But look at 2020, 14,000. So far total, almost 66,359. So we can call it 67,000. So almost 67,000 startups have been recognized by Government of India officially. Most of these startups are in service sector. Please remember this, that most of the startups are in service sector, because this statement might be asked in UPSC. You don't have to memorize this data for UPSC purposes, but you have to know this part, because this is a qualitative statement that which sector contributes more in startup, that's service. Let's look at some service hotspots in startup hotspots in India. So earlier Bangalore was called as the startup hotspot because there were like 4,514 startups between 2019 and 21. But then Delhi took over, and now Delhi is called as the new startup hub of India because 5,000 startups were registered in 2019 and 21. Now this data can change because the difference between Delhi and Bangalore is hardly 500. Any day Bangalore can be 500 more or Delhi can be 500 more. But we should remember that these two are the topmost. Now highest number of startups, look at Maharashtra. Very quietly it became top in terms of overall total number of startups. Maharashtra is number one. Now globally, what is India's rank in startup ecosystem? So India ranks third in terms of ecosystem for startups after US and China. Ecosystem means what are the conditions that we are providing to nurture the startups. So globally we are ranked third after US and China. Now let us look at the unicorns. Guys, especially in last 2 years when COVID started, one of the good things that has happened in that unfortunate phase of COVID, some good things also happened. Like many of the Indian startups became unicorn. What are unicorns? So when the valuation of a startup hits $1 billion, all right, so when the valuation of a company becomes $1 billion of a startup, then that is called as unicorn. Now India has 100 unicorns now, and this 100 unicorns that India has, this figure we got 2 days back only when the number of unicorns became 100. Now geographically, if you look at Bangalore, Bangalore is India's unicorn capital, followed by Delhi and Mumbai. So maximum number of unicorns that you find in India is in Bangalore. These statements can be asked in UPSC. UPSC asked both kind of statements, qualitative as well as some factual. What is a decacorn? So when a startup company gets a valuation of $10 billion or more, when the valuation of a startup becomes $10 billion or more, that is called a decacorn. And so far 46 companies across the world have been given this status. In India there are 4 startups which are called as decacorns. These numbers can change anytime. As we speak, in 5 minutes these numbers can change, but roughly this is the trend as of now. Now let us start the new topic, which is sustainable development and climate change. Now, to understand what is happening in the field of sustainable development and climate change, let us go back to 1992. What happened in 1992? In 1992, there was a conference called as United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, also called as UNFCCC. It was also called as Earth Summit, Rio Summit, or Rio Conference. What actually happened in this conference? In this conference, different countries of the world met and they were deciding what actions to take to reduce the impact of global warming and other such factors on climate change. We know that the average temperature of the world has been rising, and this is the cause of concern. Similarly, there is huge emission of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the world, which actually leads to global warming. There has been, reports of ozone hole and impact on the ozone layer as well because of greenhouse gases. So all these factors were discussed in this Earth Summit, whereby the countries were discussing what actions to take to reduce the impact of climate change on the world. Now, they decided that they will create a foundation and a system so that the countries would become a part of a framework which would fix some kind of common target across the world, whereby everybody would be responsible to take some steps, whether you are taking a minor step or a major step, to control global warming. Now, whatever agreements we see in future, for example, Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, etc., all these agreements, their foundation was United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So this became the foundation for all future agreements related to climate change, whereby the countries of the world had to contribute in some way to control the impact of emissions, greenhouse gases on the overall global environment. Now, Millennium Development Goals. This was supposed to be followed between 2010 and 15. Now, what is actually Millennium Development Goal called as MDG? So, the countries of the world who were the UN members, they committed that they are going to fulfill certain targets between 2010 and 15. What are those targets? Those targets would be related to reduction of poverty, hunger, disease, illiteracy, environmental degradation, discrimination against women, etc., to make the world a better place. So not only climate change, but also associated things for the betterment of life of the people. So this was the target which was covered under Millennium Development Goals 2010 to 15. Once the 2015 period was over, then we entered a new phase because some new targets had to be kept which the world would follow after 2015. So which were those targets? They were called as Sustainable Development Goals. They were also called as Global Goals 2015. See, they carry on whatever was being done by MDG, and they said that they are going to adopt a resolution which is transforming our world, the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Here also they were trying to take some action to reduce poverty, make the world more peaceful, reduce crime against women and children, discrimination. All these things were being covered under sustainable development goals also, and they were trying to ensure that by 2030 they achieve those goals. And how many targets have been fixed under sustainable development goals? 17 sustainable development targets, as I told you, like reduction of poverty, reduction of discrimination and crime against women, to promote peace and all these things. They were kept as sustainable development targets. And so 17 sustainable development goals have been fixed. Inside these goals, there are 169 targets. And to achieve these 169 targets, there are 232 indicators. So this is what you should remember for UPSC. This question has already been asked in UPSC, that which of the following is the resolution of sustainable development goal. They asked this question in the past. So this was the resolution: transforming our world, the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Now, you see the time period, that Millennium Development Goals time period is 2010 to 2015. Sustainable Development's time period is 2015, which means when MDG ends, Sustainable Development Goal starts. And when Sustainable Development Goal ends, then what happens? Paris Agreement. Now let us look at Paris Convention and what was Paris Agreement all about. You see, the Paris Agreement was discussing how the countries of the world would fulfill their targets and commitments, whatever they had made in United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change after 2020. So what are the countries going to do after 2020? One of the main agendas that was discussed in Paris Agreement was that whatever was the global temperature in the pre-industrial era, suppose in the pre-industrial era, the global temperature, average global temperature was, let's say, 20 degrees Celsius. So Paris Agreement said that they want to contain the global warming up to less than 2%, which means the maximum tolerable limit of the global temperature would be 22 degrees Celsius. But ideally, they said, we will tolerate a temperature increase of maximum 1.5 degrees Celsius. So if the global temperature becomes from 20 degrees Celsius, it becomes 21.5 degrees, they said this is the ideal. But in worst case, even if it becomes 22, that is the maximum tolerable. That was the target fixed in Paris Agreement. Now, one of the beautiful things about Paris Agreement is that the agreement did not impose any target on the countries from its side. In fact, it told the countries that whatever is comfortable to you and whatever you can fulfill, you should give the target from your side. That target is called as, nationally determined contributions, NDCs. So the countries had to give their own targets and then they had to fulfill it. So this Paris Agreement is legally binding international treaty on climate change, whereby the targets are being fixed by the respective countries who have signed the agreement. Now, what has India promised? in terms of Paris Agreement. So India promised that we are going to reduce the emission intensity. What is emission intensity? Emissions per unit of GDP. So India promised that we will reduce the emission intensity by 33 to 35% from 2005 level. So whatever was our emission of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide in the year 2005, compared to that year, we promised that we will reduce our emission by 33 to 35%. Similarly, India also promised that about at least 40% of our installed capacity of electricity generation, in the year 2030 would be non-fossil fuel based. Electricity that we generate in India is mostly, a majority of electricity that we generate in India comes through burning of coal, fossil fuel. So we have promised under Paris Agreement that 40% of our electricity by 2030 would be non-fossil fuel based. But in the year 2021, in UN Climate Change Conference, COP means Conference of Parties in Glasgow. See, Conference of Parties is the major decision-making body of UNFCCC, right? So what did they decide in Conference of Parties 26, this conference 2021? So India has increased both its target. India has willingly said that we are going to fix even a more difficult target for ourselves because we have so far achieved whatever we promised. So we are going to increase our targets. So now India is saying that we will reduce our emission intensity by 45%. Earlier we were saying we will reduce it by 33 to 35. Now we are saying it that we will reduce it by 45%. Similarly, we have increased another target whereby the share of renewables in the installed electricity capacity has been increased to 50%. So earlier we had promised that the share of renewable in our renewable energy, would be 40%, but now we are saying shares of renewable in the installed electricity would be 50%. All right. See, earlier we had said that 40% of our electricity, minimum 40%, would be generated through non-fossil fuel. Now we are saying almost 50% of our electricity would be generated through non-fossil fuel. Now let us see what is Namami Gange mission. Very, very crucial for India. You see, if you look carefully, I have taken this picture from Government of India websites only. So Namami Gange, it says budget for cleaner Ganga and improving river and forest ecosystem. So basically it talks about 2-3 things which are very crucial to save river Ganges. It says that the Government of India is allocating funds for, betterment of river Ganges. And second, the Government of India has said that we will not only focus on the river per se, we will also focus on, improving it in future, preserving the forest ecosystem on the banks of the river. We will take some steps, afforestation, etc., etc. All these things will be done. So it's a holistic approach that we have adopted. Now, what is happening under the Namami Gange mission? You see, in the year 2008, the Government of India declared river Ganga as national river based on its importance, socio-economic and cultural importance. Now, in the year 2014, the Government of India initiated this mission called as Namami Gange mission for conservation of river Ganga and its tributaries. Now, Government of India needed funds. So the Government of India created this innovative fund called as Clean Ganga Fund, whereby the Government of India is accepting contributions from, people like us, from NRIs, from industries, from private sector. Whosoever wants to contribute, they can contribute fund in Clean Ganga Fund, and this fund will go in the improvement of river Ganga. Now, in 2016, the Government of India notified National Mission for Clean Ganga. So this has been notified as the nodal agency which is responsible for monitoring and implementing Namami Ganga mission. Now, this is very, very important because in UPSC they ask you these one-liners, that which is the nodal agency. So Namami mission, National Mission for Clean Ganga, right? Now, which are the different stages in which the Namami Gange mission has been implemented? It has been implemented in 3 stages. So let us focus on this. So guys, one of the problems with river Ganga was that the river has been extremely polluted, and the pollution was not something which was happening in the past. It is happening even today as we speak. So the government of India said that we need to take a threefold approach to rejuvenate and make river Ganga better. So what is the approach? So in stage 1, the government of India said that will be called as entry level activities, and these efforts will be taken immediately. What are the immediate efforts that you can take to help a river? Immediately stop putting the waste and the garbage and the sewage in the river. Stop putting the pollutants in the river. So that is what it said, that first of all, river surface cleaning will be done. Rural sanitation and cleaning of the ghats will be done. So surface of the river will be cleaned. Now this will be immediately taken. Number 2, medium term activities. So this medium term activities will be taken in next 5 years. So what are the medium term activities that the government is doing? So the government is reducing the municipal and industrial waste entering into the river, and the government of India is using a model called as hybrid annuity model also in this medium term activities. What is hybrid annuity model? Under this model, the government of India and the private sector both provide finance to take up projects like construction of road or cleaning of rivers. So the government of India is also using hybrid annuity model for medium term activities in river Ganga. Under this medium term activities only, biodiversity conservation and afforestation is being done. In terms of long term activities, which is to be implemented within 10 years, the government has made sure that they will ensure that the flow in the river is maintained, because a river has certain quantity of water which is a natural flow. So the government of India has said that we will provide adequate flow to river water, which means the water content of river Ganga will be maintained. What are the 4 pillars of Namami Gange mission, guys? So there are 4 pillars of Namami Gange mission. So this can be asked in prelims. So pillar number 1 is called as Nirmal Ganga. What is the meaning of Nirmal Ganga? So unpolluted flow, which means that water treatment and technological changes in the polluting industries will be done. So it says Nirmal Ganga, which means that you have to keep the water of river Ganga pure. And how will you keep the water of river Ganga pure? By treating the water, by treating the waste that you are putting in the river, removing toxic from them before you discharge the industrial waste. In fact, why to discharge liquid industrial waste? Treat them, don't discharge it there. Reduce the discharge, and if you are discharging something, reduce its toxicity. That is called as Nirmal Ganga. Now, aviral flow means continuous flow. See, government of India says river has the right to maintain its flow of water. And the government says we will also maintain it, which means we will maintain the volume of the water in the river. Number 3 is Jan Ganga, which means that there is something called as people river connect. So see, everything that you see in nature, so it is connected to us and we are connected to them. Unless people become more aware, you cannot protect natural resources like rivers or mountain or forest. So Government of India has started some innovative steps like River City Alliance. So wherever river Ganga passes through, those cities and towns which are related to river Ganga, so they have a platform called as River City Alliance, where the citizens can discuss different ways of maintaining river Ganga in a sustainable manner, to take some steps to clean it. All these things related to the well-being of river Ganga can be discussed on this platform. So it's an innovative step. Now next one is Gyan Ganga. So 4th pillar is Gyan Ganga, where we are promoting research and development in the field of river maintenance, in the field of maintaining the flow of the river, sustainability of the river, and how to reduce pollution in the river. So those research and development is being promoted as the 4th pillar. Now there is National Adaptation Fund on climate change. You know guys, there are some states which are located on the seashore. For example, let's talk about states like Odisha, Maharashtra. You see Mumbai, entire city is on the seashore. So there are many states. You find sea in Tamil Nadu. So wherever there is sea, since the global temperature is rising, so don't you feel that there is a danger that these cities and towns might one day be submerged in water because the water level is rising, because the ice is melting? Yes. So there are many states which have a lot of forest areas, hills, etc. So these are vulnerable states, because the moment there is climate change, some states will have a deeper impact because they are vulnerable. They have forest areas, they are located on the seashore, etc. So Government of India has created this fund specifically to help those states which are vulnerable to climate change, which are more in fact vulnerable to climate change compared to others. So this is that fund. Now, there is a new mission by Government of India called as National Hydrogen Mission. If you are reading newspaper and if you are aware of basics of the economy, you know that we import a lot of crude oil, and the global oil prices, they keep impacting our own economy. In fact, the oil that we impose, when you burn it, it also releases a lot of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and definitely it contributes in the greenhouse gases, which leads to global warming. So for burning of fossil fuel, use of fossil fuel is not a great idea. Now, we have been promoting a lot of things like ethanol blended petrol, promotion of renewable energy, so that our dependence on petrol and diesel comes down. One of the steps towards reducing our dependence on petrol and diesel is National Hydrogen Mission. What are we doing under it? Hydrogen can be used as a very good fuel, not only for running our vehicles, but also spacecrafts, etc., and running our machines in the industries also. So there are different ways in which we can extract hydrogen. So based on the ways in which we extract hydrogen, so hydrogen has been color coded. Hydrogen is a very good fuel because it does not release, when you use hydrogen as a fuel, it does not lead to that kind of global warming which you see in the fossil fuels. So how do you get different types of hydrogen? So as you can see, we have written hydrogen has been color coded based on the source of production. So how you produce hydrogen decides what is the color that is and the name that is given to it. So if we get hydrogen from fossil fuel and natural gas, if you use these as raw material to get hydrogen, so that is called gray hydrogen, because there is a byproduct called carbon dioxide. So if you extract hydrogen from these two, there is a byproduct carbon dioxide, which is not a very good idea. Similarly, when we extract hydrogen from fossil fuel, the byproduct is carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. It is called blue hydrogen, not a very good idea. But if we can extract hydrogen from water using solar energy, wind energy, etc. So suppose you take water, so here we take water, then we take solar energy, wind energy, and we break down this water into hydrogen plus oxygen. This hydrogen is called as green hydrogen, because the byproduct of it, we do not see carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide as the byproduct. So this is environment friendly hydrogen. This is environment friendly method of getting hydrogen. So this type of hydrogen which we get through environment friendly method is called as green hydrogen. So the Government of India has initiated this scheme, National Hydrogen Mission, whereby we are promoting this green hydrogen. So what will be the positive impact of green hydrogen? The emission of greenhouse gases will come down, and the contribution of renewable energy in our economy, it will go up. Now, what has India targeted? India has set a target to install 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022 and 450 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030. In this context, using hydrogen as a fuel is very, very important. Now, there is this scheme called as Pradhan Mantri Kisan Urja Suraksha Evam Utthan Mahabhiyan, PM Kusum. What is happening under PM Kusum? Farmers use a pump for irrigation, right, in the field of agriculture. So Government of India is trying to provide solar energy based pumps to farmers. And since earlier the farmers were using pumps which were based on fossil fuel, etc., so the government of India is trying to convert the earlier existing pumps into solar energy based pumps, right? So that it doesn't run on petrol, diesel and electricity, it should run on solar energy. That is what is happening. So the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, they have come up with this scheme PM Kusum, and what are they planning to do? They plan to add 30.8 gigawatt of solar capacity with the help of central government's fund. And what are the three things that we are doing under PM Kusum? Government of India is promoting solar power plant with a capacity of 2 megawatt in each plant. That is number one. Number two, Government of India is trying to provide agricultural pump which are solar energy based to the farmers. Now, since there are lakhs of pumps which are already existing with the farmers, which are not based on solar energy, Government of India is trying to convert those pumps into solar energy based pumps. 15 lakh such pumps are being converted. Reserve Bank of India has said that they have included this component, these three components under priority sector lending for easing the availability of finance. So if somebody wants to convert the pump into solar energy based pump, and suppose money is required, funding is required. So if you take loan, bank will give you easy loans because that loan is counted as priority sector lending by RBI. All right. So this can be asked in UPSC. Now, lifestyle for environment 2021. You know, in Conference of Parties 26. So, in Conference of Party 26, UNFCCC, remember Conference of Parties is the decision-making authority about what steps to take in climate change. So in Conference of Party 26, Glasgow in 21, India proposed this movement, one word movement called as LIFE. This was proposed by Government of India. What is LIFE? So Government of India has said that the entire world should collectively put efforts so that we can modify our lifestyle to suit the environment. For example, in the field of, for example, diet, the food that we eat, the packaging material that we, use. For example, in construction of houses, what are the kind of raw material we use? Similarly, clothing, fashion, water management, energy, in everything, we should modify our lifestyle in such a way that it suits environment friendly things. That is called as LIFE. It was promoted by Government of India. Now we come to International Solar Alliance. Let me show you something interesting. Look at this, please. So if you look at this map, world map, you will see this is Tropic of Cancer, this is Tropic of Capricorn. Any country which lies between Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn and around Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, you would see India falls in this line only. You will see that these countries are very rich in solar energy. So the Government of India took initiative in the year 2015, and along with Government of France, India got support from Government of France, both proposed this intergovernmental treaty-based organization called International Solar Alliance. Its head office is in India. And what is it doing? It is promoting the use of solar energy in the world. How do you promote it? By arranging finance so that if somebody wants to develop a solar technology, solar cells, that finance should be easily available. And once the technology is developed, that technology must be shared. This is what we are doing under International Solar Alliance. India is playing a very, very crucial role. Now, in 2021, see what India did in Glasgow. India launched the joint Green Grid Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid. It is called as Green Grid Initiative, GGI, One Sun, One World, One Grid. What is it saying? It says, treat the entire world as one, and if a country has surplus solar energy based, for example, electricity. Suppose in India, we are generating electricity using solar energy and we have surplus energy, and some country is deficient, some country needs electricity. So according to this concept of one sun, one world, one grid, so the power, transfer of solar power generated in one region to feed the electricity demand in other. So if we have surplus electricity which we have generated through solar energy, we can give it to our friendly countries who need that electricity. That is the concept that India has proposed to the world. Now, look at this please. Leadership Group for Industry Transition, Lead IT Group 2019. What is this group? Now, you know, out of entire carbon dioxide emission that we see in the world, the contribution of industrial sector is 30%. So India and Sweden, they actually made efforts along with the World Economic Forum at United Nations Climate Action Summit in New York, and they proposed this idea that why not motivate the private sector and the industries to become our partners in our effort against, you know, climate change. So we are trying to promote and motivate the industries to take a pledge that they would, you know, move to new technology of production which is more environment friendly and which reduces the release of carbon dioxide. If we take industries, for example, cement industry, iron and steel industries, you know, automobile industry, these are very, very carbon intensive industries because a lot of carbon dioxide is released during the manufacturing process. So we are trying to motivate these industries to take a pledge so that they can develop such a technology in the manufacturing process so that the emission of carbon dioxide is reduced. And many companies have taken that pledge and joined this movement basically. This movement was started on the initiative of India and Sweden along with World Economic Forum. These kind of questions can be asked in UPSC. So now guys, let us get into one of the most important topics of economic survey because it talks about quality of life of people. So that topic is chapter number 10, Social Infrastructure and Employment. From this topic, I have extracted some important reforms and schemes which can be directly asked in UPSC. So let us get into it. You see, this table is very important. It is given in the economic survey. This table tells us that what is the level of expenditure by Government of India in the field of health, education and other social services. Similarly, this table also tells us that out of the total income that Government of India generates, which is called our national income, how much out of our national income are we spending on health, education, etc. So let us get into the figures. You see, when you look at 2014-15 up to 2021-22, these two are COVID years. Now, you know that if we are talking about COVID years, obviously the expenditure on health will be very high. So the expenditure on education in terms of lakh crores, it has been increasing over a period of time. The expenditure on health has also been increasing, but you see abrupt increase after 2019 because of COVID. But if you look at the percentage of expenditure on health and education out of our total national income. So for example, if the income of India is 100 rupees, out of 100 rupees, how much are we spending on health and education? Let's see. In the year 2014-15, on education, out of 100 rupees of India's income, we were spending 2.8, 2.8, 2.8. See, now it became 3.1 to 3.1. So it has increased. Look at the expenditure on health out of our GDP. So out of our GDP, 1.2% was the expenditure on health. It continued till 2019. Till 2019, India was spending 1.3% of its GDP on health, which is very, very low. Now, because of COVID, our health expenditure increased to 1.8 and 2.1. In fact, Niti Aayog has also criticized the governments of India, successive governments of India, that they have neglected health expenditure. Now, when COVID came, it actually exposed our health inefficiencies and deficiencies. It showed us that we severely lack health infrastructure. So yes, the health is an infrastructure. It has improved because of increased expenditure, but this is an abnormal year. Ideally, our health expenditure on an average should always be greater than 2% in a big country like India. That would show that we respect human lives. So this is an area where government needs to work. Now let us start our analysis with school education and see what has happened in terms of school education, in terms of new reforms and policies. So during COVID, you see what has Government of India done? Government of India launched a scheme called as PM E-Vidya 2020. Look at the letter E. You would have understood that it is related to digital education. So what is PM E-Vidya and what are the components? So PM E-Vidya was trying to promote digital education in India. What are the components of PM E-Vidya? So the first component of PM E-Vidya is One Nation, One Digital Education, Diksha. So for example, whenever digital education comes to your mind, what is the first thing that strikes you? Books. So all the books in different languages, e-books, would be available on this platform called Diksha. Similarly, the course material, the videos, the content related to different subjects are available on this portal called Swachh. So from class 9th to post graduation, whatever videos, content, material is required, it is available on this portal called Swachh. Now similarly, the government of India is also promoting One Class, One TV channel. So through Swayam Prabha TV channels, the government of India is trying to take education to the children between class 1 to 12th. So if you are a student between class 1 to 12th, you can watch these TV channels. They will teach you different subjects using this TV channel called as Swayam Prabha. Now, for visually impaired, people with difficulty in seeing things. So for visually impaired, the government of India is transmitting different lessons through radio, community radio and podcast. Now for visually impaired and hearing impaired students, those who cannot see, those who cannot hear, for them, the government of India has put everything in sign language and in a form which they can use. So called as Digitally Accessible Information System, DAISY. Now, Government of India is also providing online coaching for competitive exams like IIT, etc. to the students, so that their future is secured. Now, look at this National Digital Education Architecture. You see, whenever you create a e-education or online education system in a country, big country like India, where the population of young generation is huge, you need to take care of some basic things. So the government of India said that whatever online system of education we create, we will have some basic standards which we will maintain. And what would be the components of the basic standard? For example, number one, the student should be able to access the content, written content and the videos, number one. Number two, parents should be able to look at the performance of their children with ease. Number three, the teacher should be able to get access to books and contents which they have to use for teaching purposes. So these are some of the basic things that must be there in the online education system. So through this program called as National Digital Education Architecture, Government of India has created some basic standards which will be maintained whenever we create online education system. Now, there is this program called as Vidyanjali 2021. Under Vidyanjali 2021, if for example, you want to share your knowledge or you want to share books, etc., and you want to contribute in the field of education, you can directly connect with a government school or government aided school and share your knowledge with the children. So this is for community based education that we are trying to promote through Vidyanjali. Now, there is this scheme called as Samagra Shiksha scheme. Now, Samagra Shiksha scheme, it was basically supposed to run between 2018 to 2021, but the Government of India has extended it to 2025 and 26. What are we doing under Samagra Shiksha? So this scheme says that for all the levels of school education, for all levels of school education, primary, upper primary, secondary, higher secondary, all the level from preschool till standard 12th, Government of India is trying to ensure that these things are provided and developed in the field of school education, like infrastructure development, similarly foundational literacy and numeracy, gender equity, inclusive education, quality and innovation, digital initiative, all these things must be developed. These are the components of Samagra Shiksha scheme. It's a holistic approach. Now, Government of India is trying very hard to promote skill related to basic reading and numeracy. These two things are very, very important. Reading skills and basic skill so that we can handle numbers. So Government of India is trying to promote these two skills, reading and numeracy skill, from Bal Vatika up to age group 9. Which means, what is Bal Vatika? Bal Vatika is preschool. So from preschool level till the age group 9, which means standard 3rd, Government of India wants that at very basic level also our students and kids they should have two kinds of skill for sure. Number one, skill related to reading, and second, skill related to numeracy. And for that, we have this scheme called as Nipun Bharat. Then we have a scheme called as Pradhan Mantri Poshan Shakti Nirman, PM Poshan. So it is supposed to run between 2021 to 2025. You know, earlier the name of the scheme was Midday Meal Scheme. The name has been changed. What are we trying to do under Midday Meal Scheme? Under Midday Meal Scheme, the Government of India provides one hot cooked meal in government and government aided school to the children. What is the advantage of providing hot cooked meal to the children? It takes care of their calorie, protein, fat, etc., whatever is the body requirement. It serves two purposes. Number one, it reduces malnutrition in the children because India suffers from huge malnutrition problem. Children are malnourished. And number two, it also gives motivation to the children to come to school. So school attendance also improves. So it takes care of two things: integration of education with nutrition and health. So which children are covered under it? So Bal Vatika, just before class 1, which means preschool, up to class 1 to 8. So preschool, then standard 1 to 8. All these children are covered under the scheme called as PM Poshan. Let's see what Government of India has done in the field of higher education. For example, suppose you are studying a course in a college. Now, when you study a course, you appear in the exam, you get some marks called as credits. All the marks that you are getting in different subjects that you are studying in college, they will be stored digitally in academic bank of credit. So this is like your e-locker, where all the marks that you are getting in different subjects, all of those marks will be stored in this locker. And when you are supposed to get your degree, all the marks would be added and given to you in the form of your degree. So that is called as academic bank of credit. Now let's come to e-Pathshala. As the name says, e-Pathshala, again online mode. So high quality content in different subjects across all the disciplines of higher education, all the subjects, high quality content will be available on e-PG Pathshala. All right. So next one is Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. People say that the higher education in India is not very good. They compare it with the rest of the world. But then if you look at some of the institutions in India, they are doing tremendous job because they understand the problems of Indian society. So Government of India says that we will talk to different higher institutions in India of reputation where good, academic culture is there, and we will tell them to identify one problem of any rural area and give solution. For example, suppose we have a very good college somewhere in let's say around Rajasthan, and that academic institution is doing very well. So we can tell that academic institution that can you solve the problem of water crisis in Rajasthan? So local problems can be tackled by these academic institutions of reputation and they can solve the issues in rural areas. So basically it is for rural development. It's a very good scheme where the help of academic institutions is being taken to solve some of the problems in rural areas of India. This is called as Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. Now let us look at skill developments and some of the latest reforms related to skill development in India. The first one is National Education Policy. I had given you details related to National Education Policy in the last year's economic survey. Now in this year's economic survey, I could find out at least 3 or 4 important points related to National Education Policy, which is there in front of you. The first important point that I found was that the Government of India is trying very, very hard to make sure that at least 50% of our school students, they get some kind of vocational education by 2025. Why is vocational education important? Vocational education helps you to identify your own creative areas and aptitude, and number 2, it increases your chances of employment. So Government of India wants that at least 50% of the school students should get vocational education by 2025. In secondary schools also, the Government of India is trying to create a collaboration between schools with ITIs, polytechnics and local industry so that vocational education can be provided at secondary level also. Now Government of India is trying to develop skill labs in some of the schools, and government says that other schools can take benefit of that school wherever skill lab is present. Now Government of India is also trying to promote vocational education in higher educational institutions by creating partnership between higher educational institutions and industry or some NGOs which are experts in providing vocational education. So at all levels we are trying to provide vocational education. Now there is this important scheme by Government of India called as Skill India Mission. What is the plan of the Government of India under Skill India Mission? Under Skill India Mission, the Government of India is trying to provide skill to at least 40 crore people by 2022. In different types of skills, the Government of India wants to promote it. Now, the Government of India is trying to do these things in a mission mode, which means in a very speedy manner. Government of India is trying to train at least 40 crore people. Now, how are we going to do that? Number one, we will provide vocational training to our young generation people, and then we will give them certificates after conducting tests, and we will certify that yes, you have this skill. It will help them to get employment. Under the mission, the Government of India is implementing. So under Skill India Mission, the Government of India is implementing short-term skill development training, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, Jan Shikshan Sansthan Scheme and National Apprentice Promotion Scheme. These three are short-term skill development program, and there is one long-term skill development program called as Craftsman Training Scheme. So the Government of India is trying to promote under Skill India Mission two types of skill training. One is short-term and one is long-term. Let us understand this one by one. So let's start with Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. What is happening under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana? So under this scheme, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, they have developed this scheme and it is being implemented by National Skill Development Corporation. What are they actually doing under the scheme? The name of the scheme is Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. So you see guys, there are two types of people. One, who go to different institutions and they acquire some skill, they pass the exam, they get the certificate. But there are some of us who are not that lucky, we get on the job training. So for example, suppose that my father is an automobile mechanic. I could never go to a school or a college. But while doing this job with my father, I got this skill. So the Government of India says that if you have this skill because you have learned while doing something, so the Government of India is going to test your skill and give you certificate that yes, you have a certain set of skill. It will help you to get formal employment. So one, you acquire skill through some institution and you get a certificate from Government of India, or you already know the skill, you have that quality, Government of India tests you and provides you certificate. These two things are being done under the scheme called as Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. And it has two components. First is short-term training. Under it, the Government of India provides training to youth of India for a period less than 6 months. And the National Skill Qualification Framework, NSQF, this gives certificate once the training is complete. So for example, government can provide training related to electronics, automobile, etc. and you will get this certificate. Second is recognition of prior learning. So it means that if you already have a skill, the Government of India, which means NSQF, National Skill Qualification Framework, will test you, and if you pass the test, it will give you certificate that yes, you have that skill. So this will help you to get employment opportunities in future. Now let us look into Jan Shikshan Sansthan, JSS. What happens under this scheme? Suppose I am an NGO. The Government of India will give me grant. My responsibility would be to provide vocational training so that the chances of employment can be increased, and I have to provide vocational training specifically to non-literate, neo-literate. Neo-literate means people who discontinued their education, and then people with basic knowledge only up to standard 8th or school dropout up to standard 12th in the age group 15 to 45 years. In this age group, if I am an NGO, I am getting government grants, I have to provide vocational education to them so that they can get better employment opportunities. And what is the priority group? The priority group is women, SC, ST, minorities, Divyang and other backward sections. These are the priority under Jan Shikshan Sansthan. Now, National Apprentice Promotion Scheme. What is happening under this scheme? So for example, if I am an industry, and I'm an industrialist who is manufacturing mobile phones in India. the government of India can contact me, give me some incentives so that I can bring people and provide them on the job training. So the government of India provides incentive to industries so that on the job training can be provided in different fields. So that is this program. Now, Craftsman training scheme. The government of India wants to make sure that whatever industries are there in India, the skilled workforce is provided to them on a continuous basis. So for example, there is automobile, there is textile, there is electronics, all these industries, mobile manufacturing plant. The government wants that skilled labor force should be provided to these industries without any interruption. So the government of India is promoting vocational training of the workers through its ITIs. Government of India has established a network of ITIs or vocational training centers, and Government of India is trying to promote it so that the skilled labor force can be provided to our industries using this program called as Craftsman training scheme. Now there is Atmanirbhar Skilled Employees Employer Mapping, a SEAM portal. What is happening under this? See, there are people with certain set of skills who require employment. Then there are industries or firms who require people to perform different jobs. So I am an industry owner of an industry. I have some vacancies in my company. Suppose you want to get a job. So you are looking for a job and I am looking to provide job. So both the type of people, their data and their details will be available on this portal. It will be easy to create policies related to employment. It will be easy to match demand and supply of workforce. So this portal is going to help a lot because on a real-time basis, it will have data related to what are our industries looking for in terms of employment, and it will also have details about what are the different types of skill sets that people have who are looking for jobs. It will help the policymakers to make objective view of various sectors of the economy. Right? It will help the policymakers also because then we can, for example, if I am Government of India and if I feel that most of the industries today require certain skill set, which means they require that the people who are applying for jobs, they must be aware of certain basics of computers. So if Government of India sees this, then the Government of India can promote computer literacy among the youth. So it helps in policy formulation. Now, India International Skill Center, very, very interesting. Now, Government of India has an aim that we want to provide, workers and skilled workforce across the world. See, India is blessed with a very strong population. So the Government of India wants to send its people in different parts of the world to perform different jobs. For that, you need to provide skill. So the Government of India had started to train Indians in different skills based on international standards, and then we give them certificate that yes, whatever is required at international standard, you have that talent, now you have the certificate, you can apply. So the Government of India is giving skill to people, the skill which is of international level, and then the government is giving certificate so that you can take that certificate and you can apply for jobs in various countries. Now, is that certificate going to be valid in different parts of the world? Depends. For example, India has agreement with Germany, Belarus, UK, France, Australia, Japan, Qatar in the field of training, etc. So yes, we can have collaboration with different countries where these certificates will be accepted. Now, Pradhan Mantri Dakshta aur Sampann Hitgrahi Yojana, PM Daksh 2020-21. What is happening under this? Now, under this program, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, as a part of National Action Plan for Skilling of Marginalized Persons, for example, SC, OBCs, EBCs, sanitation workers, including waste pickers. So the Government of India is trying to provide some basic skill and vocational training to these marginalized section, vulnerable section, so that we can provide them skill, we can give them short-term training, long-term training, and we can also develop entrepreneurship abilities in them so as to give a better life to those marginalized section of the society under this program called as PM. So now guys, let us have a look at the employment scenario in the country and various steps taken by Government of India to promote employment. Now, before we go on to look at the policies related to promotion of employment and employment generation in India, it is important that we have a look at the trend related to employment generation in the country. It was COVID times in last 2 years, so it was really tough for employment generation. But let us have a look at 1 year prior to the beginning of the COVID. So according to economic survey, between the year 2018-19 and 2019-20, mind you, these are not COVID years. So in this phase, according to economic survey, 4.75 crore additional employment was created, which means 4.75 crore additional people joined the workforce of India. We can analyze this 4.75 crore additional workforce in 3 different ways. Number one, whose contribution was more in the creation of this additional employment? So rural employment was 3.45 crore, urban employment 1.3 crore. So out of 4.75, so maximum contribution was by rural and less contribution was by urban. Similarly, if we come to male and female, the contribution of male in 4.75 crore additional employment is 1.76 crore, which means out of the additional workforce, 27% were male and 63% were female. So major contribution in the additional workforce was by female, 63%, which means roughly 2.99 crore, roughly 3 crores. So out of 4.75 crore, 3 crore were female. If we analyze 4.75 crore based on a type of employment, we will find that self-employment was 65% of this. So 65% of additional workforce were engaged in self-employment activities. Regular wages 17% and casual means not on permanent basis, casual is 18%. So out of total 4.75 crore, so maximum people were engaged in self-employment. Economic survey says that, so what did we observe? We observed that maximum employment was created in rural area. Maximum employment which happened was of the category of self-employment. And the contribution of female in the additional workforce was roughly 63%. In this self-employed category, there were both male and female. So 75% of the female who joined the workforce under self-employed category, see 75% of this self-employed female, they were unpaid family labor, which means they were participating in the economic activities as family member and they were not paid. So what are we saying? We are saying that out of 4.75 crore additional employment, the contribution of self-employment was 65. Self-employment has 2 categories, male and female. Out of the female, 75% of the female were unpaid family labor. Some experts have raised serious question mark on the quality of additional employment created. Now guys, having looked at the trend related to employment creation in India, now let us look at some of the important schemes that Government of India launched for promotion of employment. We start with this scheme called as Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana. During COVID, what happened is there were industries and factories who were not performing well. Many were shut down and many were on the verge of making so much of losses that they could have been shut down at any point of time. So there was no question of extra employment creation for such factories. Typically, for example, let's talk about you and I. Suppose we join an organized sector. Suppose we join a factory in organized sector. And suppose our salary in the organized sector when we join a factory is 100 rupees. Now, whatever is our salary, 12% of our salary, which means 12 rupees, will be contributed by us because we are the workers, and 12 rupees will be, which means 12% of the salary, 12 rupees will be contributed by our company. Total 24% of our salary, 24 rupees goes in Provident Fund. It is our money only which we get later. So when we join organized sector, which provides social security, 24 rupees goes in the Provident Fund. 12 rupee we contribute and 12 rupees is contributed by the company. Now, because of COVID, the situation of the companies was not that great. So the companies were not employing new people because they had to provide that 12% contribution in the provident fund. So Government of India said that if any company provides new employment in that COVID scenario under this scheme, Government of India said that if a company provides new employment and the total workforce in the company is less than 1,000 people, so the company's size is 1,000 people, and if it provides extra employment, the government said that 24% contribution in the provident fund will be provided by Government of India only. But if the size of workforce in the company is greater than 1,000, in that case government said that they will bear the responsibility of 12% contribution in the provident fund which people make, which employees make. So if I am an employee of a company, I have to give 12% contribution in provident fund. Government said they will bear that burden if I work in a company whose workforce is greater than 1,000. So this is called as Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana. Why did Government of India start this? Because Government of India wanted to motivate the companies to provide more employment during COVID. Then we have Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhiyan. You know, during COVID what happened is there was reverse migration of a very large scale. So typically if you look at some states of India where the opportunities in terms of employment are not that great, people migrate to different states. But during COVID, they all came back. Government of India had a challenge, how to create livelihood for these people. So Government of India thought about a nice plan that why not engage those people who have returned in their hometown. So the returnee migrants, why not engage them in the construction of infrastructure in their rural areas, right? So the Government of India identified 25 target-driven work, for example, construction of community sanitary complexes, Gram Panchayat Bhavans, national highway work, water conservation, harvesting, etc. Why not engage these returnee migrants in the construction of these kind of infrastructure? It will solve two problems. It will create more employment. It will also lead to construction of infrastructure. Next scheme is Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission. Now, Government of India wants to reduce poverty at the rural level. To reduce rural poverty, the Government of India initiated a model whereby the government is going to mobilize 9 to 10 crore rural household, convert them into self-help groups, and then provide them skill and training so that more employment opportunities or self-employment opportunities can be created. So imagine that 9 to 10 crore rural households of India would be converted into self-help groups. Government would arrange for their skill enhancement and training. Government would connect them to banks for finance, to private sector, etc. And this would create a sustainable livelihood opportunity for those 9 to 10 crore households. That is the plan under National Rural Livelihood Mission. Then we have Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Man Dhan Yojana. Now suppose that I am a worker who works in unorganized sector. Unorganized sector like for example, I work as a domestic help, I work as a street vendor, rag picker, washerman, rickshaw puller. So these are vulnerable sections of the society. So the Government of India says that these people who work in unorganized sector, they have to contribute a very basic amount for a few years, and when they attain the age of 60 years, they would get an assured pension of 3,000 rupees a month. So this is that scheme. It's a voluntary and contribution based pension scheme. Similarly, there is a scheme called National Pension Scheme for Traders and Self-Employed Persons. So if you are a retail trader, shopkeeper or a self-employed person, and if your yearly income is less than 1.5 crore, you have to contribute some amount. Government will help you. And when you attain the age of 60 years, you will also get 3,000 rupees as pension. It's a monthly pension that we get under it, right? Now, there is Ishram Portal. What is Ishram Portal? So, for example, if I'm a worker in the unorganized sector, same workers which I told you, for example, street vendors, household help, and similarly, I'm a fisherman, milkman, platform workers, agricultural labor, migrant worker, construction worker. So if I belong to unorganized sector, Government of India will provide me e-Shram card, right? E-Shram card will be provided. Now using this card, the Government of India would provide me any social sector benefits that it wants to provide. So it is basically to provide social security benefit to unorganized sector. Who has created this? Ministry of Labor and Employment. Now we come to health. The first scheme that we are going to do in health is Ayushman Bharat. See, Ayushman Bharat 2018. Who recommended the creation of this scheme called Ayushman Bharat? National Health Policy 2017. What was the aim of starting Ayushman Bharat? For universal health coverage in India, to provide healthcare services to everyone. There are 3 levels at which healthcare services are provided: primary, secondary and tertiary. So to provide primary healthcare services to everyone, the government of India started the first component of Ayushman Bharat called as Ayushman Bharat Health and Wellness Center. Under it, the government of India planned to create 1.5 lakh health and wellness centers across the country to provide what? Primary healthcare facilities. Who was the target of this? So everybody, but the main focus of it was maternal and child health services, non-communicable diseases and free medicines, free essential drugs are also being provided, but all these things are being done at primary level. At secondary and tertiary level, the government of India started another component of Ayushman Bharat called as Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Under it, the government is giving an insurance cover, health insurance cover of rupees 5 lakh, per family per year for secondary and tertiary care hospitalization. Let us look at some of the facts related to Ayushman Bharat which can be asked in UPSC in the prelims. So for example, Ayushman Bharat covers both rural and urban areas. Ayushman Bharat offers cashless hospitalization. You don't have to provide cash, and it has facilities to provide hospitalization both in public hospitals and network private hospitals. What is the meaning of network private hospitals? Those hospitals which have a tie-up with insurance agencies and insurance companies to provide insurance cover to people. And the third fact is related to the health insurance cover of rupees 5 lakh which we had discussed. So that health insurance cover covers the cost of pre-hospitalization, post-hospitalization, medication, whatever is required, it can be covered under health insurance. Now, there is this new scheme called as Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission 2021. It's a central sector scheme. Now, what is a central sector scheme? A scheme which is funded by central government. And what is centrally sponsored scheme? Whereby both center and state contribute. So it is a central sector scheme. What happens under this scheme? So under this scheme, for example, we as people of India, we have to open an Ayushman Bharat health account. When we open this account, we will get an ID. So that ID will become our digital health ID, and all the information related to our health and well-being, that will be recorded digitally. And when the government of India or any insurance company wants to give us any services, etc., entire health status, all the things related to our treatment, health, everything will be available digitally in the form of digital health records. This is called as Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. Now, next one is Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission 21 to 25. The government of India had started this to create infrastructure, health-related infrastructure in the field of primary, secondary and tertiary healthcare. So to create a holistic approach to creation of infrastructure, this scheme has been started. It will cover both primary, secondary and tertiary. The next one is Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Suraksha Yojana. In India, there is a problem of regional imbalance in tertiary healthcare. I'll give you an example. When people fall sick, suppose they are located in remote areas of India and they do not have very good hospitals nearby. So they travel to different states to get their treatment. So for example, some of the famous destinations for healthcare facilities at tertiary level is, for example, Delhi All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Similarly, there is CMC Vellore, and there are other many hospitals in different parts of India where people travel. Why is it happening? Because of regional imbalance in tertiary healthcare. So the government of India has started this Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Suraksha Yojana so that two things can be taken care of. Number one, some good tertiary healthcare facilities can be provided across India without any discrimination. And number two, we should also improve the condition of medical colleges in India. So the government of India has said that there are two components of the scheme. First, setting up of AIIMS-like institution, which is happening. And second is upgradation of government medical colleges in various states. This will reduce the imbalance because tertiary healthcare facility will also be provided across India to different states. Then we have e-Sanjeevani. During COVID, it was very difficult for people to go out and take care of their health conditions. So for example, if I was not suffering from COVID, I am suffering from something else, for example, diabetes, etc., or I have migraine, I have headache, I want to consult a doctor. During COVID, it was so difficult because all the hospitals were converted into COVID hospital. So how could I avail basic health services? So this idea came to the government of India. They started to promote this in a big way. This is nothing new. It used to happen before also. But after COVID and during COVID, it became very important. So what is this program? It is called as e-Sanjeevani. Under it, so whenever I fall sick, I can use audio and video to connect to a doctor through a system called as telemedicine system, whereby through digital platforms, I can avail health services. So it is called as e-Sanjeevani. Now, National Nutrition Mission or Poshan Abhiyan. Niti Aayog created a report called as National Nutrition Strategy, whereby Niti Aayog talked about how Indians suffer from nutritional deficiency. Globally also people know that even today in India we find deaths related to malnutrition and hunger. India is severely malnourished. In our food, we severely lack nutrition. And the situation becomes even worse for women, children, pregnant and lactating women. So this situation become even worse. So Government of India has started this program called as National Nutrition Mission or Poshan Abhiyan, whereby some of the important targets of Government of India is to increase nutritional status of children from 0 to 6 years, then adolescent girls, pregnant women and lactating mothers. So we have to give them better nutrition. Number 2, reduce stunting and wasting in children. What is stunting? Stunting means when the height of the child is less than what it is expected to be. Wasting means when the weight of the child is less than what it is expected to be. So we are trying to improve it. The next point is very crucial. It says reduction of anemia in women, children and adolescent. In India, male, female, child, everybody suffers from anemia. It's a huge problem in India, and there are basically two reasons because of which we find anemia in India. One, because of lack of iron, and second, because of lack of vitamin B12. Now, Government of India through this National Nutrition Mission is trying to improve the situation of anemia, reduce it amongst women, children and adolescent girls. In fact, more than half of our population is anemic. And the situation is worse for women, children and adolescent girls. This is a very important mission because it tries to improve the situation. Now let us focus on schemes and reforms related to drinking water and sanitation. So the first scheme that we will do is Jal Jeevan Mission 2019. Government of India is trying to make sure that in all the rural areas of India, we are able to provide assured water supply through taps to all the rural households. That is what we want to do by the year 2024. So Government of India wants to provide drinking water through taps to all the rural households of India by 2024. How much water do we want to give them as a target? We want to provide at least 55 liters of water per capita per day. And we also want to make sure that once we provide the tap facility, water through tap, that facility should work. It should not happen that we give it once and then it stops working. So through this, the Government of India is trying to cover 19 crore rural families or approximately 90 crore rural population. Why is it important? Because you see, health, education, water, electricity, these are the absolute basics of life. These things improve the ease of living of people. That is what Government of India is trying to do. So the Government of India is trying to provide these basic things to rural areas also, so that the rural-urban gap becomes less and there is more equity in the society. Now we do one of the most important programs of Government of India called as Swachh Bharat Mission. This Swachh Bharat Mission 2019, when it started, it had two big objectives in mind. Number one, to eliminate open defecation in India, and number two, waste management. These two were the prime targets of Swachh Bharat Mission. Now Swachh Bharat Mission can be split into two parts. One is Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin for villages, And who finances and monitors it? Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. And Swachh Bharat Mission Urban, it is being overseen by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. So you should remember it for prelims purposes. Now, what are the two phases of Swachh Bharat Mission? Phase 1 2014 to 2019 and phase 2 2020 to 2024-25. You see, under phase 1, we had a basic aim that we wanted to make sure that we remove open defecation from India. We wanted to make India open defecation free. Along with that, we also wanted to remove manual scavenging, which in a civilized society should not happen. So manual scavenging should be removed. Plus, we also wanted to make behavioral changes in people so that they start to give more importance to cleanliness. See, ultimately, if a community participates to maintain cleanliness, so this mission will become successful. Now, in phase 2, the government of India said that since we achieve the status of open defecation free society, we have to maintain that status. All right, so that this environmental cleanliness, etc., can be a continued process. And second, to improve the management of solid and liquid waste. So first, we have to achieve open defecation free status. In the phase 2, we have to maintain it. Plus, we also have to provide solid and liquid waste management facilities. Now, in UPSC, these terms can be asked in the prelims in the form of MCQ questions. So let us look at some of the important terms related to Swachh Bharat Mission. So we are going to look at the terms like ODF, open defecation free. Then there is something called ODF plus. We will see what that is. Then ODF plus plus, then water plus, and Swachh Sarvekshan. So these are the things we are going to look at. So see, what is ODF, open defecation free status? When do we call a city as open defecation free? When there is no visible faces in the environment, in the household, or in public institutions. So no visible faces should be there. Then second, there should be safe technology for disposal of feces, right? So you take control of the feces, you don't put it in open, and you have technology to take care of it. What is ODF plus? Not even a single person should be defecating or urinating in open, because if you urinate or defecate in open, then there will be visible feces, right? So no single person should indulge in that. Under ODF plus, it is slightly strict. And second, it says all community and public toilets should be properly maintained and cleaned. That is ODF plus. These can be asked in prelims, all right? What is ODF plus plus? It says proper management of feces and sewage. And in untreated form, the sewage should not be discharged into water bodies or in open environment. It must be treated before it is discharged. That is ODF plus plus. What is water plus? So wastewater must be treated before it is discharged into open in the environment or into water bodies. So wastewater must be treated before it is discharged. So that is water plus. And what is Swachh Sarvekshan? So Swachh Sarvekshan means on a quarterly basis, after every 3 months, there should be one survey to find out the level of cleanliness in different cities and towns of India. So that is called as Swachh Sarvekshan. Now we enter into power sector and we find out what are the schemes that are related to power. So the first scheme that we are going to do is Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana to 2016. You know guys, there are 24 crore households in India, for example. Now 24 crore households, out of it, roughly half, 10 crore households, even today they use fossil fuel like coal for cooking. Out of 24 crore household, even almost half of them, like 10 crore, they use fossil fuel. It is very dangerous because, it affects the health of the family, it affects the environment, it affects especially women and children in the house because they are burning coal to cook food. And most of the kitchens in India are not well ventilated. So it's a huge health challenge for the society. So Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, they said that they are going to distribute LPG cylinders to below poverty line families. So initially the target was under Ujjwala Yojana 1, the target was to give LPG cylinders to 5 crore below poverty line families. Then they revised the target and made it 8 crore. Now under Ujjwala 2, we are trying to increase the target by 1 crore, whereby the returnee migrants are also being given LPG cylinders now. So under Ujjwala 2, this was the initial Ujjwala. Now we are having Ujjwala 2. Under Ujjwala 2, Government of India is giving LPG cylinder plus a free refill facility. Refill will be free, plus a hot plate for cooking. So these things are being given. Now, Saubhagya Yojana 2017. The Government of India has a target to provide electricity to entire India, both rural and urban areas. Universal electrification of Indian households. So Ministry of Power is implementing this scheme. What is Government of India doing under it? So for example, suppose I have a house. Near my house there is electricity pole, right, through which the electrical wires are passing. So Government of India says under the scheme, from that nearby electric pole, power will be drawn and given to my household. There will be proper wiring, electricity, sockets, everything will be provided to me. If there is no pole nearby my house, there is no wiring, electricity available nearby my house, the government says under the scheme, a new pole will be erected and constructed, and from there wires and electricity will be provided to household. So this is called Saubhagya Yojana. It is run in both rural and urban areas. Now let us have a look at some schemes and reforms related to rural development. You see, the first one that we are going to do is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. What is the target of Government of India? The target of Government of India is housing for all by 2022. This was the target that the Government of India fixed. Now it has two components. First is called as Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin. And by the way, when this scheme was being created, the Government of India, in fact nobody had an idea that there would be something called as COVID. So COVID disrupted many of the schemes and many of the policies, not just in India but across the world. So nevertheless, let us have a look at Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, which means to give affordable houses to rural India. Under this scheme, the affordable houses are being given to rural India, where the center and the state are sharing the cost on 60:40 ratio. Now, if you only provide houses, it's not going to help the citizens. So under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, the Government of India is constructing 2.95 crore houses, but along with houses, some basic facilities like toilets, drinking water, electricity, LPG connection and employment under Manrega. All these things are being given along with houses, which means it's an integration of scheme. Housing for all, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana is a scheme related to housing, but we have a scheme related to toilet, that's Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, for drinking water, Jal Jeevan, for electricity, Saubhagya. No, for all these schemes which are running, they are integrated with Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana to give integrated facility to citizens. Who gets priority under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana? Landless people. So if I don't have land, I have no asset. So everybody will be given facilities to construct houses in rural India, but those who don't have land, they will be given priority. Now, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, this is for providing affordable houses in urban areas. It was being run in 3 phases. So, phase 1, 2015 to 17, over 100 cities were covered. So, affordable houses in urban areas. Phase 2, 2017 to 19, over 200 cities were covered, and whatever cities were left, they were covered in 2019 to 2022 under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban. Then we have Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. You know, this is very important to know. For example, imagine this, that you are a farmer, you are producing crops, but you don't have a road which is of good quality. So every time there is rain or there is adverse weather situation, how will you carry out your crops to the agricultural market or mandi? If there is no road, there is no facility for transportation, you can't carry your crops to the mandi. Most of the crops are perishable in nature, highly perishable. So your crops will be destroyed and your entire effort as a farmer is gone. Similarly, if somebody falls sick in your village, and how will you take them to the nearest health center, which is a good health facility, because you don't have roads. Similarly, if there is a nice school 15-20 kilometers away from your village, but there are no roads, how will you take your child for education purposes? So, you know, Government of India said that we must connect the unconnected rural habitation with roads. We must give them roads which are, all weather roads, which means in every weather the road should be in good condition. It should not be washed away by rain, and it should help the people in the villages in all seasons, all weathers. All right. So plus along with road, we must create drainage facility as well. So this will help to promote agriculture. It will lead to more employment, because in the construction of the road, people can be employed. It will lead to improvement in, health conditions, education, employment, agricultural market, etc., etc. How is the financing done? Since 2015-16, the center and the state are sharing the cost in 60:40 ratio under Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Now, what are the challenges that we face in running this scheme called as Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana? The challenges we face is lack of dedicated fund. We don't have a super dedicated fund specifically meant for running this scheme. Number two, lack of involvement of Panchayati Raj institution. We should make them our partners whenever it comes to rural areas and villages. So that is missing. Now, in hilly areas, it's very difficult to construct the roads, and then a scarcity of construction material is also a problem, plus security concerns, especially in left-wing extremism areas. So there are areas of India, states of India, where there is a security threat to construction workers in construction of road projects. They are called as left-wing extremism states. These are the challenges. To remove that last challenge, Government of India has started a dedicated scheme called as Road Connectivity Project for Left-Wing Extremism Affected Areas up to March 2023. So, there are 44 districts and surrounding areas across 9 states which are deeply impacted by left-wing extremism. Which are these 9 states? Andhra, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Telangana and Uttar Pradesh. So to construct roads in these areas, the Government of India had started this program. Why are roads important for these areas? Because, if you construct roads, you can help the farmers, you can improve the health status, education, and you can connect these places with the mainland. So once the communication line is open, once the movement of people starts and basic facilities are provided like road, health, education and electricity, then the benefit of development or GDP growth of a country can also be shared with the rural areas and cut-off areas which remain in these LWE districts, so that they can also feel like equal participants in the growth of this country. So these kind of projects are important. So guys, this completes our schemes and reforms related to these 3 chapters of the economic survey. I have created a PDF handout for you, which you will find in the links along with the video. You should use that PDF as a study material for these 3 topics and prepare for your examination. So thank you so much and all the best.